I want to bring in NBC's Garrett Haake, who's in Toronto. Ron Insana is CNBC's senior analyst and CEO of iFi AI. Charlie Sykes is an MSNBC contributor and columnist, and NBC's Christine Romans is here with me on set. Okay, Ron, you heard what Chairman Powell just said. What are business leaders telling you about this level of uncertainty?
Well, I mean, I think that's the key word, Chris, and neither markets nor business leaders like uncertainty. They would prefer clarity in and around any changes in policy, as Jason Furman was saying in the last hour, whether it's around business policy, fiscal policy, trade policy. A roadmap that's established and well understood allows for businesses to plan for the future. But this on-again, off-again tariff and trade war that is ongoing is creating all kinds of difficulties for businesses to make plans on procuring inputs for production here in the United States or exporting to other markets overseas. And so this level of uncertainty is undesirable on a wide variety of fronts. Even consumers are somewhat concerned about this. So for the moment, this is the order of the day. And until we get more clarity around what's going to happen, I would expect to see volatility in the financial markets for certain. I think Jay Powell made some calming statements about saying that the economy was in good shape. And that may have been what was behind the bounce off the lows that we saw today, but there's still a great concern about whether or not this trade war, as it were, is being conducted in a way that would help either markets or the economy overall.
Well, let me ask you, Ron, about what we just heard from the president. We haven't gotten this, what we call the play out yet, but we do have some pool notes about it. So Trump started talking about Canada and dairy products. He talked about a tremendously high tariff on lumber. He said Canada makes it impossible to sell lumber and dairy products to Canada. So here's what he said then, Ron. They'll be met with the exact same tariff unless they drop it. We may do it as early as today, or we may wait until Tuesday, POTUS said, of yet other tariffs on Canada. When folks out there hear that, whether you're Jerome Powell or you're a business owner or you're an everyday American who's watching their 401k, what are you to make of that?
Well, look, it's just confusing for everybody. I mean, there is really no one out there who fully understands the method here that is ongoing. I mean, look, as was said in the last hour, you know, in the renegotiation of NAFTA, the USMCA, we picked up, you know, nearly 0.5% of market share of the Canadian dairy market, and so. You know, the USMCA wasn't really all that different from NAFTA. There weren't great strides made that altered the course of trilateral trade among the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. I think there are just more questions than there are answers. The automakers obviously went to the president and said, look, we import parts from Canada. We import parts from Mexico. We make final assembly here. Having this type of on and off conversation disrupts their process of producing goods. And so it's hard to explain any of this because it is so, you know, to borrow a Beatles term and the term associated with another event in American history, so helter-skelter. I mean, we just really can't track what's going on here. And markets this week have suffered their worst declines in the last 2 years. So it's hard to explain or make of what the president is suggesting. And, you know, trying to renegotiate a year before we were supposed to with Canada and Mexico. One seems premature and also seems in many ways not productive either for the economy or for financial markets here at home.
Which brings me to you, Garrett. And again, I want to reiterate what the president just said, that there could be some new tariffs as early as today, or we may wait until Tuesday. Now, that literally just happened, so I know you don't have time to get reaction to that. But already before he said that, what were folks in Canada telling you?
Well, Chris, let me just add that the White House's official policy on additional tariffs towards Canada has been the steel and aluminum tariffs that could go into effect next week and the so-called reciprocal tariffs that would go into effect on April 2nd. If they've created a whole new category in the last 24 hours, that wouldn't be terribly shocking within the confines of how we think about the Trump administration, but it would certainly be a surprise to people here in Canada, where I cannot overstate enough the sense of frustration and confusion and even betrayal I've heard from Canadians. that their closest ally, America, would behave in this way towards them, both by imposing these tariffs and just the manner in which the president speaks about Canada. A short time ago, I interviewed the Premier of Ontario, the largest province in Canada, who's really been the tip of the spear on the Canadian response. And his sort of key takeaways to me is, as these issues tend to fluctuate back and forth, he's not removing Canada's response to the tariffs until he's totally confident that Trump has backed down. And it seems like this war could only escalate. Here's some of what Doug Ford told me a short time ago.
It's more confusion. The only thing certain about yesterday was uncertainty moving forward. And with investments in the U.S. and Canada, everything's stalled right now. And it's really, really concerning. So we're going to continue on. And I always say in every interview, Canadians love Americans. I love Americans. We love the U.S. I lived there for 20 years. And this is insanity.
And Chris, that's a sentiment I've heard over and over again, too, from Canadians, that they don't see sort of regular Americans as responsible for this. They very much see President Trump as responsible for this. But it's all of Americans who are going to get punished. They are quite confident in Canada that Americans are going to lose their jobs over this. American companies are losing market share. $1 billion worth of American liquor, give or take, is sold in Canada. Those products are all pulled off the shelves right now. Their bottom line will go down. And Doug Ford's talking about raising the prices for electricity that Canada exports to New York and Minnesota, other northern states. So this could get worse for American consumers' bottom line, as well as Canadians, before it gets better.
Garrett, it looks very cold there. Thank you for standing out in the cold for us and for sharing your reporting. It's important. Appreciate it. Christine, let me tell you a couple of anecdotal things I've heard in the last couple of days, and then you can give me the bigger picture. And it's simply this. It seemed like a few days ago I had friends saying things like, well, I was thinking about buying this or that. I feel like I need to buy it sooner because I don't know if prices are going to go up. And then that seemed to switch over the last 24 hours or so to maybe, I don't know if I should buy anything. I don't know what my economic future is. My 401k is tanking. Talk about the real effect on consumers and buying.
So uncertainty is the enemy of decision making, right? Whether you're a company or whether you're a person who's trying to make a big ticket item purchase, but also chaos is really an enemy of confidence. And so that's what we're seeing right now for so many consumers and for businesses. When I talk to businesses, especially in the auto parts and the auto part of the economy, they're not going to be hiring a bunch of people this week, right? If they were thinking about expanding, because they don't know what next month is going to look like. These are long supply time industries that really are facing major chaos, and that causes a dampening of economic activity. And that's what we're watching here. You've got a real vibe shift from businesses and from consumers over the past couple of months, and it's because of the chaos that's happening here. I'll make one last point about consumers. About half of Americans own stocks directly, right? So you've seen this Wall Street turmoil. It's getting a lot of attention. Everybody has to go to the grocery store. You have tariffs on 20% tariffs on Chinese items. You have tariffs that are on some Canadian and Mexican goods. You have tariffs threatened on lumber and all these other things. Prices will rise. That means every American will feel that.
So, Charlie, let's talk about the political impact of the economic impact. And to do that, I want to play what the Treasury Secretary said on CNBC when asked about what we're seeing: consumer confidence down, stock market down, and the overall impact. Here's that.
Could we be seeing that this economy that we inherited starting to roll a bit? Sure. And look, there's going to be a natural adjustment as we move away from public spending to private spending. The market and the economy have just become hooked. We've become addicted to this government spending, and there's going to be a detox period.
So I'm going to, talk to the experts on the economic part of that, which is this switchover that they see away from government spending. But just from an empathy to talk about this as just a detox period when the average American is hurting, how does that play, do you think? He's not the first one to give an answer that did not seem to include how the American people are being impacted by this.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is what voters voted for last year, this kind of detox pain, and I don't think that they voted for the kind of whiplash and confusion. I think there are a lot of voters who thought, okay, we'll have a little bit of disruption. But what you are seeing is government by whim. Donald Trump is, I think, enjoying the chaos because he wakes up every morning and decides who he wants to punish and who he wants to reward. But for millions of Americans who are out in the real world, I mean, this is incredibly disconcerting. Do you buy a car? Do you not buy a car? You've had this discussion. And there's no reason to believe that this uncertainty is going to end because this is Donald Trump. This, he is the government right now. He is the decision maker. And you are seeing the way that his positions change with the wind, with his mood, with whatever it is. So that chaos and that uncertainty is baked into the reality that we live in right now, and quite frankly, that leads to all sorts of unpredictable reactions, including the downstream effects. I think that a lot of Americans may like what goes on in Washington, but everybody's going to be affected by this. This is going to have an effect on every single household, every single community, every single state, and right now, it looks like there's a possibility that he may break something that seemed unbreakable just a few months ago.